welcome. It is time once again for CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM. I'm struggling with the streaming, but I don't know if I'm getting it to work or not. We shall see. Have no idea. Anyway, as I said, what did I say? CU Immigration, yes, here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM on your FM dial, or however you put that. I will be your host for this evening. My name is Mr. Garza, and I am here to let you know that WRFU is an open forum for the Urbana-Champaign community. It is. Views expressed are those of the speakers. They are, and they're not intended to represent WRFU, UCIMC, Urbana Socialist Forum, or UPTV, as we like to say here on the televised version of this show. These views are our own, and by our, in this instance, I mean myself, naturally, and probably the views of whomsoever writes a story that I decide to share with you during this next hour. Yes, those are the views that these are, and the aforementioned list of groups are the views that they aren't, or something like that. I actually do know what I'm talking about, but I'm just distracted because as you may know, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, we've started streaming over the internet here from WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM, and you know, it works sometimes, and then inexplicably, for no reason that I can come up with, it won't be on. It'll just be turned off, or something will be unplugged. So today I got here about a half an hour early because I thought, okay, it hasn't been working lately, and I wanted to fix the streaming. So I've been messing around with the computer. I've been crawling around under the desk, plugging and unplugging things, and adjusting levels and doing all of that kind of stuff. All in hopes of making your streaming experience a memorable one. But unfortunately, it's unclear. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. All I know is that I am trying to make it work. But I guess what my point was, that I was getting at, was that it is distracting to be messing around with this and be looking at other levels and things, and I lose my train of thought. So what I have to do is start ignoring all these various flashing lights and dials and things, and just get back to talking. Anyway, yes. So let me try this again. Welcome to CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana 104.5 FM. Thank you for joining me. It has been an eventful couple of weeks. As you may have noticed, I wasn't here last week. It's because I was working on something, and I didn't feel like quitting, and I didn't really feel like I had something. There's always something to talk about, but I didn't feel like I had anything new and different to talk about. I felt like it was sort of the same old thing that I always have to say. Well, of course, waited a couple of weeks, and now there's all sorts of things to talk about. And I'm not laughing in a good way. That's not because it's funny. Immigration is the theme of this show, as you know, and that's what we talk about here. And the confluence, if I can call it that, of immigration and politics. I mean, immigration is basically a political topic. People come here for all sorts of different reasons. But what changes that into just what makes that different from any other kind of moving around is that the government has a set of laws about who can come here and when they can come here and how long they have to wait and what all that means. So that means that immigration becomes political. It's an act. It's a political act, even when it's just like, hey, I think let's go to the U.S. because they have this, or they have that, or whatever. It's that's, their reasons may be political. They may be fleeing political violence in their country. There may be all sorts of questions related to the politics between their country and our country, our country's politics towards their country, the way we treat them, etc., and so on. But the individual, the person who is the immigrant who comes here, I don't know. They're quite varied. And they change all the time. So, in a sense, why people come here and what they're hoping to get out of it is a constantly changing thing, depending on the situations in the countries that they come from, the situation here, and so on. I mean, there's some sort of standards, some general themes like economic opportunity. They want to live in a country that has a high standard of living overall, things like that. And so, the U.S. has there's a lot of mythology surrounding this place, along with just whatever the reality is, that leads people to imagine a certain kind of life once they get here. Here's what it's going to be like, or here's what I'm hoping it will be for me or my family or my children or whatever. So all those things, obviously are interconnected, and they play into the decision. Sorry, this keeps cutting off. Hello? Okay. It's working now. That's strange. It'll be going and it'll stop. Oh, we can't get the new board in any too soon. Okay, so where was I? Yes. So a lot of these things play into people's decisions to come here. But politics really has a huge effect on what that experience is like. So the decision is one thing. The decision-making process is one thing. Why they come here, how they get here, all those things, whether they choose to stay, whether they think they're going to come here for a short period and then leave. But the political equation has everything to do with what that experience is like for them and how people here think about it. And so politics is played, if I can twist the word around, with people's lives in all sorts of ways. And so naturally, what's going on in politics here has a huge effect on the experience that immigrants face when they come here. So lately, as you may have noticed, there was a horrendous shooting in Orlando, Florida. 50 people died. Another 50 or so were wounded and are in the hospital. And immigration, the topic of immigration once again rears its ugly head, and we're told that even though the shooter was an American, he was born here, spent his whole life here, because his parents were from Afghanistan, and he was only a second-generation American, that makes the topic of immigration somehow relevant to some people. And by some people in this instance, I'm, of course, probably talking about the Republican candidate, Mr. Trump. So let's check in on what does Trump have to say about this. Let me see. So this is entitled, "Trump Wants to Ban Muslim Immigrants to Protect Gay and Women's Rights." Oh, really? Very strange. So it reads as follows. In his speech today at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire, Donald Trump advocated banning Muslims from the Middle East and South Asia from emigrating to the United States. That's a step down from his plan last December to block all Muslims from entering the United States, but it would still put the United States on a war footing with Muslims and also put the American state in the business of judging churches. In addition, Trump sounded an ominous note by insinuating, without evidence, that American Muslims were aware of the terrorists in their midst, but were not reporting them to authorities. In framing the threat of radical Islam, however, Trump took a tack that may have surprised his audience and may not have pleased some Republicans. Trump portrayed himself as a defender of LGBT and women's rights against radical Islam. He said, quote, "Our nation stands together in solidarity with the members of Orlando's LGBT community. A radical Islamic terrorist targeted the nightclub not only because he wanted to kill Americans, but in order to execute gay and lesbian citizens because of their sexual orientation. It is an assault on the ability of free people to live their lives, love who they want, and express their identity. Radical Islam is anti-woman, anti-gay, and anti-American." Not exactly what you'd expect from a Republican candidate. Anyway, Trump also got in a dig at Hillary Clinton by maintaining that he was in fact a greater supporter of gay and women's rights than she was. Quote, "Ask yourself, who is really the friend of women and the LGBT community? Donald Trump with his actions or Hillary Clinton with her words? Clinton wants to allow radical Islamic terrorists to pour into our country. They enslave women and murder gays. I don't want them in our country." End quote. Trump's stand on blocking immigration from Muslims because they oppose women's and gay rights puts him in line with some European right-wing populists like Holland's Geert Wilders and his Freedom Party. That probably won't win him a lot of support from feminists and members of the LGBT community who are likely to oppose his blanket stand against Muslims and have not been thrilled by his attitudes towards women. But his stance for gay rights won't win him a lot of friends in his own party. As news of the massacre in Orlando broke, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, whose opinions probably reflected other religious right Republicans, tweeted and wrote on Facebook a Bible verse, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." Trump immediately turning this into radical Islam. And of course there is some not credibility, what I'm trying to say, there is a nugget of truth around that idea, because the shooter purportedly called 911 before he started and pledged his allegiance to ISIS, the radical group who is currently sort of more or less based in Syria. So this does tend to put a lot of Republicans in an awkward place, though, because rather than being able to have a full-throated anti-Muslim outcry, which is what they usually like to do after things like this, they're in a bit of a pickle because they like to say that, oh, well, they hate us because of our freedoms. But the freedoms in this instance, gay and lesbian people in a gay bar having fun and openly expressing their sexual orientation, those freedoms are something that the very same people that like to use that phrase have been trying to take away and suppress for years and years and years. So it's a little more difficult for them to come out and really be gung-ho about this in their usual way. Let's find out a little more about what Trump has to say about immigration here. So this is from NBC News. In a speech reacting to the massacre in Orlando, where 50 people were killed, presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump doubles down on his proposal to ban immigration of Muslims, and he expanded his proposal to suspend immigration from areas of the world where there is a proven history of terrorism against the United States, Europe, or allies. Speaking at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics Monday, Trump did not mention foreign policy, discuss the fight against terrorist group ISIS, or propose solutions to combat hate or extremism. Instead, he said the attack early Monday morning at the Pulse nightclub was the result of U.S.'s immigration policies. Bear in mind, editorial comment here from me, that the person who perpetrated these attacks was an American. Born here, born in New York, I believe. Moved to Florida, lived here all his life. He's an American. Legally, not an immigrant. His parents, on the other hand, were immigrants, but that's a different thing. So, back to Trump. Quote, "The bottom line is that the only reason the killer was in America in the first place was because we allowed his family to come here," Trump said, reading from a teleprompter. "That is a fact, and it's a fact we need to talk about." The killer was born in New York, but his father is an immigrant from Afghanistan. So, more editorial commenting here. Okay. So, the only reason the killer was in America in the first place was because we allowed his family to come here. So apparently, this is kind of in keeping with Trump's comments about the judge who is currently looking at the Trump University fiasco. He too is an American, but he also had parents who were from another country, and because of that, because his parents were from Mexico, apparently the judge can't be impartial and is, suspect in some way about his beliefs because of his ethnicity, apparently, because being born in America supposedly makes you an American, a U.S. citizen, but that is now not good enough for Trump. He's dragging immigration into this event and making it somehow an issue about immigration based on the fact that immigrants come from other countries, and therefore apparently no matter when they did, or the fact that their children are supposedly Americans. I mean, that's the presumption. When you're born here in this country, you are a citizen of this country. That's not good enough. So it's a pretty torturous way of making immigration a part of this conversation. There are any number of ways this conversation could go. We have guns, the easy accessibility of guns. This guy went out and bought an assault rifle and a pistol a week before, and then went in the other night and shot all these people with them. So we have gun control. That's one issue that could be debated. Clearly, some sort of homophobia must have been at the basis of his selection of targets. If you're going to pick a target, you have to, on some level, you have to be saying there, all right, let's see, a daycare, restaurant, park, gay bar. So you're going to go shoot people. Which people do you go shoot? Well, presumably, you pick the ones you don't like for some reason, or that you think deserve it the most, or whatever. I don't know exactly how the mind of a mass killer works, but I'm going to guess that you do this because you're angry, because you're frustrated, because you feel like you're impotent in a way and you can't affect what's going on in the world. So the only thing you can do is just go out and destroy things. So what do you choose to destroy? Well, in this instance, and in most instances, I would guess you choose a target that has some relevance to you in some way. The guy that went and shot the grade school up, he went to that school. I believe his mother worked there. I don't know. But anyway, he had a connection with that school. So some reason he was fixated on that place. There's always some kind of connection. Like, why do you choose this place to shoot people? There's something about it that attracts you to it and makes you think this is where people that deserve to die are going to be. So we have to assume that homophobia was at least a part of this person's thinking. So we have gun control, the easy access to guns. That's one issue. Homophobia, that's another issue. Pledges allegiance to ISIS. Okay, so that's a third issue. We have international terrorism as a focusing agent for the anger and frustration of disaffected people around the world. So you come out and you say, my organization stands for X. Here's what we believe in. Here's what we're fighting against. Come join us. And you can see from our actions that you are allowed to express your hate and anger any way you want to, as long as you say it's on behalf of us. So that's one of the magic ingredients of ISIS and how they work is they don't really have a very strict ideology. I mean, they certainly do not follow Islamic law in terms of what they do to people and how they do it. So pretty much it's like you can kill people any way you want. You can kill anyone you want, and you can kill them any way you want. And you are following our lead. I mean, you are joining us when you do that. All you have to do is say you're joining us, and you are. And then it becomes somehow legitimate to do that in some way. So I could go, I mean, anyone, anywhere, apparently. All I have to do before I kill them is say, I pledge allegiance to ISIS, and, I believe in them. I don't know what the wording is of that, but however you do it, it doesn't matter. And then I'll go kill the people that annoy me, or the people that play loud music at night and make it hard for me to sleep, or the guy that gave me a dirty look that one time when I accidentally drove in front of him, or whatever, I mean, really, all ISIS does is say, you're angry, you hate, you want to destroy something, okay, fine, that's great. We support you in that. Just say it has something to do with us, and we accept you. We embrace you for doing it. Now, it's a different thing, of course, when you actually go over to where they are and join them. I mean, you have to, there are a lot more rules and things for that kind of support, but they welcome pretty much anybody who kills anybody anywhere for any reason. As long as you say it's for them, they're happy to have it, because that spreads their notoriety and makes them more seemingly successful as an international terror organization. So while there's a lot to be said about quote-unquote radicalization, I think really that's kind of a misnomer. I don't think there's a lot of that goes on. There is some, for sure. There are some people who are really deeply steeped in ideology, who read all the stuff and who start believing it, and who really go from being kind of normal people to really radical people because of what they read and believe and think they understand about the world. That does happen, but there are a lot of people who are just plain angry and unhappy and bitter and hateful, and they're just looking for some kind of focal point, something to like point all of that at. And that's where we get, these different kinds of attacks. The guy that shot up the church in Atlanta a while back, I think it was Atlanta, he was just going around, but then he found white power and white nationalism and racism, and that finally that gave him a focus. It's like, okay, I have all these feelings and frustrations and anger and hate. Now I know who it is I hate. I hate these people. I hate them for this reason. Thank you for telling me what I wasn't seeing all along. This is who I really hate. He probably didn't even start out having anything like that in his mind, but he found a focus that just sort of struck a chord with him, and then he went for it. And I'm imagining that this shooter probably did the same thing, and that was the extent to which he was radicalized, because according to news reports, his father says he wasn't a particularly observant religious person at all, and he was just, his father doesn't think religion had anything to do with it, and I think that's very possible. He was, however, very angry about gay people and homosexuals, and he was, that really made him angry. So I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I am saying that I think some people are not so much radicalized as they are focused by these groups. So anyway, those are some of the various themes that we're going here. And yet, somehow, to bring it all back around, Donald Trump manages to tack on immigration onto this in some way. So let us return to our story. So Trump had originally said he would temporarily suspend immigration from Muslims, but he was starting to soften that idea in recent weeks. But after Sunday's horror, he went further. Quote, "The ban will be lifted when we as a nation are in a position to properly and perfectly screen those people coming into our country. We are importing radical Islamic terrorism into the West through a failed immigration system." Again, how radical Islamic terrorism, whatever that is, has been imported through immigration, and what that has to do with this guy that went and shot up a nightclub on Sunday night, who was an American, born and bred and raised here, I don't know. I'm not sure how our immigration system had anything whatsoever to do with that. But anyway, so Trump also attacked presumptive Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton through his speech, saying she cannot be a friend of the gay community as long as she supports current immigration policies. The shooting took place at a nightclub frequented by members of the LGBT community. He said Clinton wants to ban guns and abolish the Second Amendment. In parentheses, Clinton has never said she wants to ban guns or the Second Amendment, but she does support banning assault weapons. Trump noted that he will be meeting with the NRA to discuss how to ensure Americans have the means to protect themselves in this age of terror.